Hello everyone, welcome to Cook With Me Live. So exciting to be on tonight because I get to make pesto with you guys, and I don't know about you, but for me this is my absolute favorite party food. So while everyone's logging in and saying hello, give me a little wave. Let me know where you're cooking from tonight, and if it's your first time joining, then you definitely have to give us a wave and let me know where you're cooking from or who might be in the kitchen with you tonight. So a lot I want to cover within such a simple recipe. Now, I know some of you might be thinking, oh really, just like pesto? But for some of you may have never made pesto before in your life, and maybe, just maybe, you've never made pesto like this. So I do want to show you a couple of new tricks, a couple of ways to make this a really easy staple, and I want to talk to you about the benefits of it and how important it would be to get our kids loving pesto, if they don't already. Personally, I don't know about you guys, maybe you should give me a little vote on this. I find that pesto is not only the fastest dish to disappear on a party table, well, at least this one that I've made is, it's also the healthiest, I think, by far out of any party food that we would consider an extra special treat. So for that reason alone, I think it would be a really good idea for you to learn how to make this pretty much without thinking. And it's also a really good use for leftover greens. So if you've got some greens that you had really good intentions for, but now they're sitting in your fridge and they might be starting to kind of go off or wilt a little bit, this is a really great recipe to have on hand. Just kind of in your head, you just know it's going to need these rough ingredients. I'm going to show you how easy it is. And then you can quickly pull together a pesto. Even if you're not wanting to eat it straight away, you can freeze it, and I'm going to show you that too. So there's a lot of different tricks and tips I want to show you even within this simple recipe, and then we can talk about ways in which you can turn this into a meal in and of itself, kind of like I'm going to do for dinner tonight. So you guys ready to go? Who have we got today? Oh, Jody, welcome. Cooking along. Cool, not just watching. Excellent. Denise, you're watching tonight. Hello. And hello, Glenda. Cool, very good. Thanks, ladies, for being on. It's really interesting with the pesto. I think when people taste this version of pesto for the first time, I think people are usually surprised at how many or how much volume of healthy green leafy greens we can get into them without realizing you're eating such green food. Okay, so I think I'd call this recipe more of a skill rather than like a fancy dish, because if you can learn how to make it quick, make it easy, make it healthy, and love it, that's a really big, I think, important thing to have up your sleeve. So let's get straight in, if you guys are cool with that. Welcome, Dawn. Thanks for joining in. We are going to need a food processor. It doesn't need to be a whiz bang wow one, but we are going to need a food processor to get that down fine. You could possibly get away with some blenders, but it might be a bit of a headache unless you've got one with a wand and unless you're happy with quite a fine blended consistency. I wouldn't recommend using a blender if you have the choice. The food processors are actually designed to not make it fully smooth like a smoothie. It's designed to keep some texture and some chunkiness to it, which I think is preferable for a pesto. So we will need a food processor, and then you're going to have quite a range of choices that you can make with the greens. So I'll show you how that goes. You guys ready to go? Let's get into it. So with the greens, options. We have plenty of options. I've just at the moment in my garden, I've got a lot of parsley, not a lot of other greens at the moment. So I just went and grabbed these, and they were actually freshly rain washed today, which was quite lovely. I did give them another little rinse. But some beautiful parsley. We've got some older pieces in here too. You can tell by the thickness of the stem. So this is quite an older plant. So these really thick pieces, if you have something like that, probably not as friendly in the dish, as in you're going to probably taste a little bit of extra chunk. But everything other than that, see these consistencies here, all of these parsley stems can definitely go in. So that's a good extra bit of nutrition that you're going to get. We're just going to take out these really big stocky ones. And when I say take them out, I just mean chop off the stocky bit. We're still going to include the rest of it. Okay, where does this go? Not in the bin, not in the compost. You have a couple options actually, and it's not just for your stock bag in the freezer like we talk about. It's also actually really good to make tea with. Okay, so parsley tea, you might be sitting there going, really? Are you serious? But until you try it, don't bag it, because it's actually really, really tasty. And it's light and refreshing. It's really good as a palate cleanser as well after a meal. And particularly good for lots of nutritional benefits too, which we'll discuss in a second. So you could keep that. You could even freeze it into pieces and put it in tea, or again, leave it for your stock or in your broth. Okay, so that's going to be a good addition for that. Okay, so I've got a nice big huge bunch of parsley here. Now you might be sitting there going, hang on, I thought basil was the key ingredient in pesto. Well, traditionally yes it is, but if you don't have a lot of basil on hand, or you don't feel like sitting there and plucking leaves off the stems, then we can use other herbs instead, and we can change it up a little, not only for taste reasons but also for nutrition purposes. Okay, so fresh herbs, guys, have so much more nutrition per calorie than many other foods out there. It's almost a bit of a rule of thumb that the stronger the flavor of a herb or a leafy green, the more nutrition it's going to have per calorie. Okay, so it's not a perfect rule, but it's a bit of a rule of thumb. So that means that your fresh herbs, for example, are going to have more nutrition than something like a plain spinach or like a silver beet leaf. Okay, and I'm sure they're all different and there's different ranges, but as a general rule, we want to be getting as many of these wonderful fresh leafy green herbs into our world as we can, and pesto, I think, is the best, easiest, tastiest way to do that. Okay, so this one I've actually already given a wash. I'm not going to redo that. I am going to give it a little bit of a weight, though. I'm going to get a weight on it so we can see exactly how much we have here. Now I have given you weights and I've given you roughly one large bunch. So that's kind of what I'm defining as one large bunch. Let's see what we get for a weight on that. So notice I'm not going to need to do any chopping necessarily with this machine. I'm just going to put all of that in there. Okay, so we are going to get, that's about 135 grams. So I've called for about 150. Let's call that good. We'll put a little bit of extra spinach or something in instead. Okay, so we can start off with that one. Stems and all, guys. Did you see that? Very important. Okay, then we can do some spinach and also some silver beet. So this is one of those veggies that I find people struggle to know what to do with. Okay, and in the theme of trying to get more variety into your diet, then this is a great option. So I'd love you to be buying things like this. And even if you don't know exactly what to do, think of any time you see leafy green, it can probably go in pesto. All right. With the slight, I wouldn't say exception, but for very particular palates, you probably will be selective if you put kale in. Kale is for the really trained palates who absolutely love kale and love the little bit of bitterness that it comes with. So with the silver beet, I find that the stems in this can go a bit watery. So, I mean, this much stem is going to be okay, but this is going to be too much. So we're going to put that one in, but these white ones we can save for the broth. Okay, so same deal there. So we're just going to take off most of that grain, leaving the stem sort of behind here, which is not what I usually recommend, but we're not going to waste it. We're still going to use it in the broth. Okay, so we'll get a bit of the green in there. And just pop quiz here. Who can tell me, let's just choose an easy one first. Who can tell me what parsley is extra, extra good for? What is the number one key mineral, vitamin benefit that we are getting from, let's say, parsley? It's a bit of a, I wouldn't say a trick question, but it might not be what you first think. Okay, so I want to talk about that. I'll give you guys a second to think about that and maybe write that in. You're not allowed to Google it though. And let me know what you think the key benefit that we're getting from parsley would be. Okay, so we've got some silver beet there. We're probably going to need a bit of spinach as well to make up for the weight that we need. So hopefully you've just got a few leaves of spinach. Depending on the season, sometimes you can get it still on the stem, like proper big spinach. That would be even better. Okay, so we'll give that a bit of a rinse. You could put a bit of vinegar in this water too. I just haven't done that yet. I've got some, these are all beautiful organic veggies I just got from Freshbox. Thank you, Freshbox. Now, key thing here is we are gonna have to spin dry whichever greens you're putting in, okay? Now, I know I said that with the parsley. I didn't do it with the parsley. I gave it a really good shake because it was all on the stem. But as a general rule, you really wanna try to spin dry your greens. Otherwise, you're gonna get quite a watery pesto. And that's not gonna be very nice, okay? So we can spin dry, or if you don't have a salad spinner, I'll show you another trick. You can get out a clean tea towel. And this is the trick that we used to do. This was our job as kids when we would have salad for dinner. It was to do the drying of the lettuce. So you just take your wet lettuce, lay it flat in your clean tea towel. Okay, and then you just wrap it up, roll it up gently, give it a little squish, get all that water out. And then you've got fairly dry lettuce. It's nowhere near as good as a spinner, okay, so it's just a bit of a caveat, but it is an option if you do not have a salad spinner yet. I would highly recommend one though, so that you can actually enjoy greens more often and more easily, and you have less laundry to do. Okay, so we'll add that to our mix here, and then I'll spin dry the rest. It's a bit of a different result. Shouldn't notice a difference in here though. So what do you guys think for spinach? Any ideas? Hey Peter, welcome. Welcome Lainey. We have someone else on here too, which I can't read your name of, but welcome. Very cool. Okay, so guys, I didn't have any guesses, so it might have been too tough of a question. So the question was, what is the #1 thing parsley is good for? I'm a bit of a parsley fan because it is so incredibly nutritious, and I can't believe we've degraded it down to a garnish on our plates. It's just, I think that's blasphemy. So parsley, guys, incredibly beneficial. So half a cup of chopped parsley, we're not even talking that packed, but half a cup of chopped parsley has about 6 times our daily requirement for vitamin K. It is also extremely high in vitamin C. Okay, I believe it was about 80% of our daily requirement for vitamin C in just half a cup of parsley, and it's really high in vitamin A as well. Okay, so massively beneficial in a whole bunch of other things, but those are like the top 3 if we had to highlight it. Now, vitamin K, for those of you going, oh yeah, but what does that do? Vitamin K, I think you're going to hear a lot about in the upcoming months, years, as far as research goes. So, you know, there used to be all this interest in, first it was vitamin C, and then we learned about vitamin A, and it's going to become vitamin K. You'll be hearing a lot more about that. So in particular, what vitamin K is good for is the blood, okay? The cardiovascular system, the clotting of the blood, but also the balance in clotting. So there are some cases of people having a deficiency of vitamin K that can't clot or clot too much. So it's about balancing the ability and the function of the blood. And it's also really good for our neurological system, so our brain function. That's why babies generally get an injection of vitamin K at birth, is to make sure the blood clotting thing happens and also the brain development. So vitamin K is pretty important, guys. And as you can see, with even just a good serving of pesto, with its high in parsley and spinach, you're going to get a pretty good, decent amount of that in a day. So very much, I think, a superfood in that sense. All right. Let's spin dry the rest of these, and you'll see, maybe even just from that little bit that I had in there, how much water is still remaining. Let's see how much we got. I'm going to pour this into a measuring thing so we can see that. Okay, so just to prove a little bit of a point here, you see how much lettuce and spinach was there. It's not a lot, guys, compared to how much we're going to use in this recipe. I got a little under 1/4 cup of water out of just that much using the spin dry. Okay, so you can imagine if that had gone into here because you hadn't spun dry your pesto, times how much more volume of grains we're going to put in, you'd have a very watered down pesto. Okay, so hope that's been illustrated. All right, so it's pretty important in this sense. Let's keep adding. Now notice I'm kind of packing it in here. By the time we turn this machine on, it's going to reduce down really quickly. So if you don't have room and you're having to pack too hard into your machine, just leave it aside for now until we do the first blend, and then you can add the rest in. So we're up to about 280 grams. We're looking for about, say, 400 grams, roughly. So we have a bit of a ways to go, which is good because I still want to include the coriander. Now, if you don't love coriander, that's okay. Use basil, okay? Or use more parsley, or you can get creative. There are other amazing green herbs that go deliciously well in pesto, such as sorrel. Okay, now sorrel is something that you may not be able to find, well, you won't find it at the supermarket, but you may find it at a farmer's market, and otherwise you can grow it yourself pretty easily. It grows very well, at least in this climate, okay? And sorrel tastes a bit lemony, so it's quite nice in a pesto because it gives that added dimension of lemon, I guess, if you will. So let's just give these guys a good little rinse. There's quite a bit of sand usually around the stems of the coriander, so you want to kind of cut it off like I did and give it a good little massage here under the water, just because it holds a lot of sand. There we go. Okay, one more spin dry. Now see, proof the bowl's empty. Let's see how much water we get off that one, pre-shaken. Love these machines. Okay, any guesses? Okay, well, coriander was not holding as much as the other guys. But there's another not quite quarter of a cup. So we're probably up to just under half of a cup here so far that would have ended up in there if we hadn't spun dry it. Okay, let's see how we go. Now you might have to be a little bit reasonable here. You might have to leave some out so we have room to put everything else on top. But we're up to 380, so that's going to be pretty good. It's going to be pretty much right the amount. Okay, and obviously that's based on this machine. So if your machine's a bit smaller, you'll have to do this in parts, but I'll show you how to do that. Wow, bang on 400. That, I didn't even plan that. That's kind of cool. Sometimes things work out, other times they don't. Now these stems of the coriander, don't throw those away too quickly either, because that carries a lot of flavor. Most of the flavor, believe it or not, is in the root of the coriander. So most of the sand and dirt though is usually around this as well. So what I would do is I'd put that just to soak in a little bit of water there. And then we'll just give it a good rub later to put it into our broth, just to make sure we get all the sand out of those crevices. Otherwise, you can kind of chop it up a bit more and then wash it as well. But don't throw that out, because that's a lot of flavor, a lot of benefit for your broth, particularly in the flavor sense. There's another little trick. Okay. All right, so we've got enough greens. If you didn't, you could keep going with a bit more silver beet. Like I said, you could add sorrel, a bunch more spinach, and if you have basil, then that's another thing you can add in as well. Okay, so there's the greens. Let's pile everything else on top. Now this is how easy it is to make pesto. I have given you measurements, so if it's your first time, do use the measurements. But after you've gotten comfortable with how much you can kind of put in, we're looking for about 1.5 cups total of nuts or seeds. So what do you want to use? These are some activated almonds that I did up a little while ago in the dehydrator. I actually forgot them for a couple of days because the dehydrator shuts off automatically, which is kind of nice. Don't have to think about it, you just set it, forget it. So we're looking for about 1.5 cups, but it's not the end of the world. I'm going to add some walnuts, just a couple. They're quite strong in flavor, but I really want those extra omega-3s, really good for the brain. Okay, feeling a bit decadent, want to add some macadamias. Love a good bit of extra macadamia love. And then guys, what do we mainly get from pepitas? Any ideas? I don't want to give it away before you have a chance to say, but what's the number one benefit from pepitas that a lot of people need in their diet? A lot of people are deficient in this mineral. There's a hint, it's a mineral. Yeah, it's one of those foods that you want to be able to sneak into your diet somehow. And if that means you got to put it in a pesto, go for it. Any guesses? Yes, Lainey, thank you. Parsley, never appreciated it until you told me that during the program. Very cool. Yes, parsley is absolutely incredible. It's one of my favorites. And in terms of getting the most nutrition per calorie in your diet, if you're looking at, counting calories or you're calorie aware, I promise you something like your leafy greens, especially parsley, it's in the top 5 pretty much most nutritious foods per calorie. Spinach is way up there, parsley is way up there, and a lot of the other leafy greens. So try to get more parsley into your life. Start by getting more parsley into your garden, and then it's going to be a lot easier to grow. Okay, so some guesses. The key main benefit of pepitas, we've got a guess of selenium. We've got a guess of magnesium. Okay, those are good guesses, guys. It's zinc. Okay, so pepitas we want to have zinc in our world. It's obviously for other benefits as well, but zinc's one of the main ones. Okay, so I think that was about 1.5 cups of nuts. Once you blend it up, you could add some more, add less. It's entirely up to you guys. This is a very flexible recipe, so you have that prerogative. Okay, so now I've called for the juice of 1 lemon. Now, what does that mean? If you've got dry lemons, you're going to need a little bit more of that. If you love lemon, you can obviously add more anyways. And If not, you can add a bit less, but this is also going to act as our flavorful liquid to help blend the dish up too. So if you're adding less lemon than usual, you may need to add a little bit of water, but hopefully not, because then you'll get it watered down a bit. I'd rather you be able to add some lemon flavor or lime. If you don't have any lemons, use lime. It's another option. And if you really love lemon, then you also want to add some of the zest. Okay, so the zest is where you get the lemon flavor. Some of you may have heard me say this before. The juice is where you get the sourness. Okay, so the actual lemon flavor comes from the skin, comes from the rind, not from the juice. So if that was something you wanted to include, you could get out either your fine grater, or you could get out one of these zesting tools. Okay, and it would have been better if I'd have done this before I juiced it, but you can just add a little bit of lemon zest in there to give yourself a bit more lemon flavor. Okay, because it's the oils in the skin that contribute the lemon flavor. There we go. So that's going to give us a little bit of extra lemoniness, lemony schnickets, and I need some more lemon too. I do not want to go short on that. All right, so we've got our lemon juice. You can use lime juice. Ooh, that's a good juicy one. Let's get that all in the bowl, Ashley. It was too big of a lemon for the actual juicer. I should have done the citrus press. Pays to have options. There we go. Hopefully we didn't get any seeds in there. That should be enough. If not, we can always test it and add more after. All right, so we've got our nuts and seeds, we've got some lemon juice, we need some olive oil. Now, if you're really advanced in the oils section of your pantry, you may also have some flaxseed oil in your fridge. So you could be also adding a tablespoon or so of the flaxseed oil to make sure that you're getting that extra bit of omega-3s. Okay, so otherwise we're going to be adding our olive oil. Now, you can measure this, but eventually you'll just get the feel for how much to use. If you want to go the full half cup, that'll be 8 of these. I think I'm one shy, but that's all right. Again, something you can adjust after once we get the initial blend. Okay, then we're going to need some salt, some nutritional yeast, maybe a bit of pepper if you'd like, if you're up for something a little bit extra spicy. And this is going to make a fairly big batch, so we do want to go the teaspoon and a quarter. You might want a tiny bit more, but we'll start with teaspoon and a quarter there. I like to add a bit of pepper. I haven't called for it, but I like a bit of pepper in there. Those of you with Thermomixes are probably sitting there getting mad at me because I'm overfilling the bowl, but I'll show you how quickly it'll reduce down, so it's okay. All right, and then we need some nutritional yeast. So between half a cup and 3/4 of a cup. Now, this is instead of Parmesan cheese or instead of any other dairy in a pesto. I've done taste tests, I've done blind taste tests with people, and most people tend to prefer this version without knowing the difference. So that's something to keep in mind. Just if you've never had it before, give it a try. You might love it. And when I've called for 1 clove of garlic, guys, I'm not talking this size of a clove. Okay, so if you're working with elephant garlic, these beautiful, beautiful heads of garlic, that's 1 clove. So we're obviously not going to put that whole thing in, even though this form of garlic tends to be a little bit less strong than the smaller ones. We're not going to quite put the whole one in. So this just depends on how much you love garlic and how much you love your neighbors or don't love your neighbors. And again, it's one of those things where you won't necessarily be able to detect it when you first taste the dish, but tomorrow you will. So as it sits, it's going to get stronger. Keep that in mind. When you first taste this, you might need to adjust, or don't be tempted to adjust by putting too much more in, because by tomorrow it's going to get a lot stronger. So that's just a bit of a heads up with garlic. Okay guys, we're ready to do the first blend, and then we get to taste and see how we go. Hopefully I'm not forgetting any other ingredients. You guys will let me know if I am, right? So we'll just get the lid on to this. And if you don't have a machine with a wand that allows you to stir while it's on, you may just need to stop the machine a couple of times and just give it a bit of a scrape down to make sure you're getting everything in there. Okay, let's crank it up. Now I've got a stem stuck in the lid, so it's not getting blended. I'm just going to fix that up. There we go. Okay, so see how we've started to get most of our pesto texture happening, but it's a good time to just stop the machine and give it a bit of a scrape down so we get all these bits evenly incorporated. That one's a stubborn one. So we'll give it a good scrape down. And then we'll go again. So as you can tell, this is going to be a much thicker pesto than the ones that you'll buy in the shops. The ones that you buy already made are usually very high in oil, so that they can, I guess, save a bit of money, because it's the greens that are going to cost the most in this recipe, and the nuts. But they're going to be really high in oil as far as a traditional pesto goes. So this is why it's nice to make your own, because you can make it really much more about the greens rather than just kind of an oily sauce that gets put over pasta. Okay, this is now something that you can eat, dare I say, as much as you want of and come out better off than not having it. Hello, Shannon. Hey, Reardon. Thanks for being on. Hello, Carrie. Cool, guys. Has any of you well, I guess I'm curious. Who has made pesto before? I would like to know. And I'd like to know if ever you've ever put, parsley in your pesto, or coriander, or not used basil. Okay, so guys, this is the consistency anyways that we're looking for. But that being said, if you really don't like as much of a texture to it, then keep blending. So just turn it on for longer, let the machine keep running, and it will break down still. Have a taste. Aside from the garlic, see what else it needs. Is it lemony enough? Does it have enough salt? Okay, if it just kind of tastes a little bit meh, then it probably needs a little bit more nutritional yeast and salt, okay? Or a little bit of lemon as well. So remember, lemon contributes to the sour taste on our palate. Salt contributes to the salty taste on our palate. The nutritional yeast contributes to the middle section of our tongue, which is called umami, or also known as savoriness. And the nuts are going to contribute to the umami as well as the sweet part of the tongue on the front. Okay, and oil is just going to carry the flavor. The greens are what's going to contribute to bitterness, but that's what we're trying to balance out with all the other tastes, because most people don't love that as a first taste. Okay, so just see what it needs. I think in this case, I need a little bit more salt in mine, and I could maybe use a couple more nuts, but it just depends on what texture you're after. So I'm going to add that little bit of extra salt. I think it's got enough lemon. Okay, and I'm going to give that one more little blend just to mix in. Maybe get the texture down a little bit finer, not critical. Shannon, you're ahead of the game. Well done. I was getting hungry too, so I'm glad you've had a chance to eat. My stomach is grumbling. And other Shannon, just a basic basil pesto. Is that what you're making, Shannon? Is that what you mean? I might have misunderstood that. Oh, I see. You've just made a basic basil pesto before. I get it. Okay, cool. And you use it as, so first Shannon, use it as a dip, and then pasta pesto the next night. Excellent. Genius. Love it. Love your work. And I love that you're starting to get in the flow. Hey, Shannon. Shannon and Lainey have done, and Peter have done my program. And they're probably all well over this. All over this like pesto on bread. So guys, this is where we're at. Texture-wise, like I said, it's more of a dip than a sauce. But that doesn't mean you can't thin it out and turn it into a sauce, or still mix it through. If you mix it through hot pasta or hot potatoes, like roasted potato cubes, then that will be fine. It'll mix through that beautifully. So I'm quite happy with that. All right, so let's just serve this up into some sort of a dinner. I'm just going to do a bit of a platter with some veggies. Okay, so we'll start off just by putting a little bit of it in a bowl, and then we can build our platter around it. But I want to show you a couple of tricks with with the veggies. And before we do that, I actually forgot to tell you about all the other specific benefits of spinach that I kind of wanted to share, because I think some people forget to eat their greens like Popeye, especially their spinach. So guys, kind of on the same superfood note that we were on with parsley, spinach has 10 times your daily amount of vitamin K per cup of cooked spinach. So it's more physical amount of it, but a cup of cooked spinach is a fair amount, but that's 10 times your daily need for vitamin K. It's really high in vitamin C, really high in vitamin A, a whole bunch of manganese in spinach. It's just got everything in it. Oh, and folate, guys. So folate is extremely important for breastfeeding mothers and pregnant mothers. Extremely important to the extent where most women, when they get pregnant, are told to take folate supplements. So there is a possibility and a chance that you can actually take too much folate in supplement form, but there's no known risk of eating too much folate from food. Okay, so you can go to your heart's content eating the bowl of pesto to get some extra folate into your body, and then maybe you can supplement less with like a pill form of it in that sense. So if you are pregnant or breastfeeding, lots of greens, and you will be so set as a result. So with the extra pesto that you're not going to be having, I want to show you this little trick for freezing it. So if you freeze it into ice cube trays, then you can customize how much you take out of the freezer at once. So you might just want to take out a little bit at a time to use, for example, on a pizza base as the sauce, okay? You might just want to take out a little bit to add into like a lunchbox, okay? So for kids, if they just want 2 little squares of dip, cubes of dip with their veggies, then it'll be defrosted by lunch and it won't be warm. So it's kind of a nice little trick there for lunch boxes. But instead of sitting here and individually spooning it into each one, check this out. Just plunk it on top. Okay, and then get your spatula, trusty spatula, and press it in. So eventually you'll kind of know how much you've put down and how many squares to go over, but that's all there is to it. So you don't have to muck around with getting just the right amount in each square. Maybe you've got a little bit more you can clean out of the bowl to add in there. But that's a trick that works with a lot of things actually. That works with making muffins, like if you're doing the silicone muffin trays or cupcake molds, you can do that with batter. You can do that when you're making chocolates in little tiny chocolate molds. So it pays to have one of these trusty spatulas. Get everything out of the corners and then just smooth it over and freeze. So as soon as this is frozen, you kind of don't want to leave this too long in the freezer uncovered, but as soon as it's frozen, like in 12 hours or so, you can pop them out, put them into another container or into a bag, and then that way you can have pesto on demand, which I think is a pretty cool idea. Do you guys think that's cool? Who's with me on this one? Am I totally alone and in the dark on this one? Okay, so there's some pesto we can freeze. If we don't eat all that, we can freeze it as well. If you were to be storing this now in a container in the fridge for a couple of days, one little suggestion is to pack it into the container, okay, so there's no air bubbles in it. Pack it flat and then either put a good layer of lemon juice over the top or a bit of a layer of olive oil over the top to prevent the oxygen from turning it brown. Okay, if it does turn brown, it's okay, you can still eat it, but most people won't eat it. They'll think it's gone off and then it's wasted. So at least if you put that layer on top, and then once you've scooped out the bit you want, just flatten it down again, put a little bit more on top, and then you should be good so it doesn't go brown and you're not gonna waste it. Okay, another little trick. And then when it comes to the veggies that we're gonna serve with this, here's a couple little ideas to make this a bit more interesting. Maybe to get the kids a bit more into having veggies in general with dip, whether it's pesto or not. Okay, so if you have a nice big hunky carrot like this, actually you don't even have to have a big fat one, but if you do, it's gonna make better slabs. So you might wanna cut it in half first. Otherwise, if it's a bit of a novelty, then you can just try and make your slabs full length. This one might be a bit challenging. So I'm gonna go half first, and then we're gonna do slabs. So you're just basically taking flat pieces off the edges, okay? Now you can go thick or thin. If you go thin, they're more like ribbons than slabs. But this way, they're kind of like those crisp bread crackers, right? So in terms of the shape, they're a little bit more of a novelty to serve your pesto on a board or a plank or a slab, however you want to call it. It kind of looks like a slab of wood. I think it's kind of cool actually how much the carrot resembles a tree. But then I would do that, and you can just serve that with a little bit of pesto on top as something a little bit different. And sometimes all it takes is a bit of a novelty in how you cut something for the kids to go for it. So you can call them carrot slabs or carrot planks, and you can make them walk the plank, and they can play like it's on a boat, and whatever it takes. Let's just get the greens into them, okay? So that's one option, making carrot slabs. And I think that's kind of cool, right? That's pretty awesome way to eat carrot. Another thing you can do with something that's a bit skinnier, like this cucumber, it's nice to go straight rounds. Other way around. If it's really skinny, we want to give it a bit more depth. Otherwise, like if we were to just make a little round of cucumber, there's no surface area there to cover in pesto, right? It's too tiny. So what you're going to do is you're going to cut it on an angle, quite a sharp angle, and then you're going to end up with crackers. Okay, so you can call them cucumber crackers, but at least now you've got enough surface area to put the pesto on. Okay, so now this can become little, you can call these little pesto crackers. Okay, so there you've got your little cucumber cracker. And then if you have quite a, I guess a fat vegetable, or a vegetable that people maybe aren't too madly keen about, then we want to keep those pieces smaller, so we're going to cut exactly straight across the round so that we get these nice perfectly round crackers, and it still looks like a little something different compared to the ovals that we get with the cucumber. Okay, so then we get nice little rounds, and if you get your thicknesses correct, then people will get more pesto than zucchini, which is what most people are going to be after. Okay, so there's a couple of ways to cut the crackers so that you have, well, crackers, so that you have some options. And then if you were to just put this all on a plate, you wouldn't even have to even put the pesto on in advance unless you were serving it at a party, like at a cocktail party on a platter. Then I would do them in advance. But otherwise, we'll just get a couple of these chopped up. Okay, and then we can build out a plate. So whenever you're doing a plate, you always put the dip or the bowl for the dip down first. Okay, and then we can build up all of our tasty bits around it, as decoratively or as quick as we like to do. Ooh, this is like a deck of cards. That's fun. There you go, you've got carrot cards. Gotta have fun with food, guys. What's the point otherwise? Those are carrot cards. I need some kids to come over. I'm having too much fun here on my own. I think I need some kids to enjoy this with. Adults would just think I'm crazy. You guys won't though, right? Please. Hey Wade, welcome. Haven't seen you guys in ages. That's awesome. Here we go, making pesto. Okay, and then this side I'd probably cover in some crackers, like actual crackers, or corn chips, something like that, just to round it out a bit. But guys, if this was even all the kids were to have for dinner and they were to go nuts on this, that's awesome. I mean, think about how much nutrition you've just jam-packed into the pesto. They're having to eat it with the raw veggies. Maybe once the crackers or the corn chips are done, that's all there is, and then they can keep eating with the other stuff. But that's just an example, okay? So there's a really decent meal, especially compared to how a lot of kids are eating nowadays, and even for adults, okay? And at dinner, don't forget, we don't need a huge meal. You'll be better off having your breakfast as your huge meal of the day, your lunch as your medium meal of the day, and dinner can be nice and light and fresh and easy to digest, so you sleep better tonight and are ready and looking forward to a bigger breakfast tomorrow morning. So I have no problems with that as a dinner. Thank you, Glenda. I love it too. I'm hoping that Ross will love it as well. So guys, there's our pesto. I think I've kind of filled your brains hopefully with enough of the other benefits around pesto and why to love it, why to learn to love it. Don't forget, it also takes your tongue between 14 and 20 tastes to learn how to love a new food. So get counting. Here we go, guys, your garden herb pesto. If you don't already have some herbs growing in the garden, schedule it in your diary to get some planted. It doesn't take much of a pot to get a big, beautiful parsley plant going. Just start with one thing. Thanks, guys. Big hugs. We'll see you next time on Cook With Me Live. Night-night.